A glutton's heaven. A prison. A flame of hope. The Maw in Little Nightmares isn't just a quiet backdrop. No, the surroundings in these lore-heavy games tell us just about everything we know about the Nowhere. It's a character in its own right, shaping the world and the inhabitants within it. Each step through these twisted environments tells a story, pulling you deeper into a nightmare that feels all too real. Whether it's the towering heights of the Maw or the eerie silence of the Pale City, the places in Little Nightmares aren't just where things happen. They define how we experience the game, how we solve problems, and how we understand this timeless world. I'm PlanetDrewpiter, and today I want to take a deep dive into everything we know about the Maw so far. Exploring not just the sections of it, but the hidden stories and secrets that lurk within them. I want to visit every location in every Little Nightmares game. I'll be going through all of them in order that we learned about them. This video will only focus on Little Nightmares 1. So we'll be talking about visual design, the symbolism, and the gameplay specific to the Maw. So let's piece together how these environments shape how we experience the Nowhere. But before we get started, if you feel inclined to during the video, please give the video a like and subscribe to the channel. It helps a lot. Thanks. The Maw arrives every year, always at the same time but never in the same place. It creeps and crawls and buries its claws deep beneath the glistening water. And there it sits in vast silence, waiting. Soon after, they start to arrive. The guests. The monstrous, sweating, hungry guests, all seams bursting, bodies bulging, eyes dead with boredom. They shuffle up the gangway and into the mouth of the Maw. And then, they are no more. For none of those that enter have ever returned to tell the tale. At least not yet. The Maw is the main general setting for the first Little Nightmares. Functioning like a massive vertically designed ocean liner, the Maw feels almost alive. With its slow, rhythmic movements, our screen tilts gently the whole game as it floats like an iceberg in the open ocean. This instability visually gives us that exact feeling the whole time. We are at the mercy of our surroundings. A large majority of it remains beneath the ocean. A bulbous turtle shell-like head and tall metal chimney only actually piercing the surface and bellowing thick black smoke. The only reason this part is even visible is for some sort of entrance for its guests. When passengers need to board, the Maw rises from the depths, revealing a shell-like entrance that beckons the unsuspecting inside. It's a very ominous contraption and sort of reminds me of a special kind of sea creature all on its own. Steam-powered engines roar in the depths, pushing the entire structure forward. It even has huge fishing nets dragging behind it, catching the monstrous sea creatures that become part of the guests' feast held within. Despite that resemblance on the outside, the Maw has a twisted, surreal design, one that is very reminiscent of M.C. Escher's lithograph print, Relativity, a depiction of a world in which normal laws do not apply. Its compartments connect in strange, disjointed ways, giant rooms are separated by even bigger, yawning chasms. The only comparable thing we have in our world, I'd say, is like some sort of massive cruise ship. It's separated into 7 main areas. We start our journey in the deepest, darkest depths of the Maw, the prison, a dark and lonely place that serves as a grim introduction to the Nowhere, themes of entrapment, and themes of fear. We wake up in a long-forgotten suitcase. It seems that our protagonist, Six, snuck in and somehow lucked out enough to be able to wander the cold industrial corridors freely this way. The area is leaking water profusely from giant pipes bolted to and from the ceiling. It kinda seems like everything is holding on by duct tape and bubble gum. Another particularly eerie note about the prison and the Maw in general is how it seems to be built for smaller creatures too. Padlocks sit low to the ground, miniature ladders wait for Six, and even now, as we stroll through the prison, a metal hatch perfectly invites us to crawl through it and into the air vents. Maybe they're water ducts, who knows? And yeah, okay, the mall is definitely not a masterpiece by any stretch of the imagination. This area we started in is connected by massive chains and a railless ladder as well. It looks like this area might be used for drainage due to the pipe ends on the joined wall, but I wonder what causes the need to have the area floating separately. Any ideas? As Six sneaks into the next area, we find a porcelain statue that looks like the lady. It's not something I won't talk about too much, but there are 10 throughout the entire game. When you find them and break them, a puff of dark smoke and white sparks float up and away. Nothing much is known about what this smoke is, but you receive a porcelain mask for Six to wear when you break all of them. One that looks eerily similar to the lady's. Six slips under a boarded up door and into a sort of living area. A very wet one. While it does seem like a step up from a prison cell, it's not much. It has a broken-in leather couch, a dresser, boxes, and a bare mattress on an iron bed frame. It's all soaked, and there are 2 random armchairs hanging by ropes on the ceiling. Maybe it's like a little storage area too? We climb through the tiny window there and find the infamous hanging man. And now, it seems like a strange place for an adult to decide to do this, or even find himself in this particular area of the vessel. And now, when you look at the context of this situation, it seems like he was a prisoner in the mall, even though he was an adult, which I find that really interesting. How did he find himself in this particular area of the vessel? As we progress on, I think we can confidently say the upkeep in this place is truly awful. Broken floorboards and leaks are in every room, not to mention the leech infestation we start to encounter. Six narrowly escapes a circle of them by pushing down a hingeless door and jumping another huge chasm in pretty much complete darkness. The prison area is so big, there are even areas that don't even seem to be in use, with little to no light. Roger skulks above us in the next cavernous room that separates the cells. He pulls a small metal cage behind him, but we notice the first clue that someone has been there. A rope tied together with bed sheets is draped out of a cell window. This is exactly where the runaway kid starts his adventure when following the mysterious girl's escape. More on that later. The bathrooms in the cells are communal in this area, which turns out to be a common area for all the kids trapped there. And while, yes, these children are trapped here, they have a lot of toys and activities. We pass wooden blocks, a seesaw, swings, and an ashtray full of cigarette butts. It paints this strange picture of childhood mixed with something only meant for adults. The eye also looms over the cell doors, keeping watch for any kid that tries to make their escape. The room we eventually meet Roger in up close is in a communal sleeping area. Even as the monstrous creature bursts through the door in the middle of the night, dozens of kids lay completely undisturbed. I suppose it's his duty to even patrol within the rooms all throughout the night. Then, Six sneaks by easily through the vents. She finds herself in an enclosed cafeteria though, but not on the inside. I think this is an interesting part for multiple reasons. That although there are tons of kids asleep in their rooms, there's still one out in the open eating at a table. Does he have a separate job from the others? Maybe this is another case that time isn't really a thing within the mall or the nowhere in general. After Six recovers, she makes her way into a huge room full of backup cages? There's hundreds of them all stacked up on each other. None of them, as far as I can see, are full. They either expect a lot of prisoners or they expect to lose a lot of cages. I'd bet the former. Either way, there's even an electric barrier Six has to navigate up, around, and back under. And finally, we come to another cavernous separation where we have to jump a bridge that's drawing up. Overall, this area is unsettling. It's a true prison for children. I especially find it eerie that they have a playground in the depths of this hulking underwater metal monstrosity. It's the connection between adults taking care of children, but in a more aggressive way. It has an extremely oppressive atmosphere, which is important to the game's introduction. The design is made out of hard edges, hard materials, and mechanical puzzles. They're trapped, unguarded, and helpless. As we climb a collection of stairs leading away from the prison, we are welcomed to our first introduction to the Lair. This is an in-between area concerning the janitor's quarters, the waste area, and just a general shift in theme toward the adults. We find an office with a secret switch leading to a security terminal, and the security hub where the eyes deliver their live feeds to. It's basically a security office, but no one's there. And maybe it's by happenstance, but it seems like with such an important job, maybe someone should be close by. Are the adults in this world especially lazy? We do get a chance to scroll through the feeds/areas we'll be visiting down the road and see a chef sitting down on the job breathing rather hard. While a lot of them seem to be in a zombie state, the main ones do look like they're keeping busy. Maybe the mall is stretched so thin that you can't have full-time security guards on duty all the time. And on the other hand, maybe this is Roger's office and that's how he just appears out of nowhere all the time. Lots of questions here. After perusing the security cameras, Six continues up those same stairs to a small bedroom with a picture of Roger right in the middle. Not saying he's a narcissist, but is this his room? The extremely high shelves give a clue that it might be. Also, there's a secret passage that leads to a locked elevator room. The only thing abnormal about this being the janitor's quarters, Roger's room, is that there are straps on the bed. Maybe he's a prisoner himself working off his time, or maybe he uses it as a last-ditch effort to detain an escaping child. When we take that elevator down, we start to see the first signs of shoes. Lots of them. Through a series of events, we end up back in a tiny cage, and at first we think, are we all the way back in the prison? Not quite. After escaping our cell, we manage to open a heavy security door and sneak into a sort of central delivery repository. Roger, being the man of so many jobs, seems to also set up the deliveries of wrapped up humans. Maybe they're the children he has lined up in the cages in the next room. Either way, long strips of linen line the floor, just enough to use them to muffle the sound of your footsteps to Roger's extremely good hearing. We slip into a room with a hatch with nowhere else to go, then Six cranks open the shaft and hops down it. Thankfully, it's clogged with shoes and we have a soft landing, but we now know this is definitely in use and being used a lot. We see it with our own eyes when we follow the shaft to a huge room full of old discarded shoes. The only place I could think where all these shoes could come from is from the guests we see later down the line. They get their souls or life essence taken from them by the lady, and then they are disposed of. I'm guessing they use their meat along with the fish they catch to supplement the food they serve to future guests. Why do they keep the shoes though? I honestly don't know, but there is an unseen monster crawling around under them, so maybe it can survive off of the rubber and leather so they can use him for other misdeeds. After we make our escape from the shoe pile and up a very tense elevator ride, we find a loose floorboard and creep under a room Roger is lingering in. The longer you look, the weirder this room gets. It's full of wooden life-sized children and other strange toys. So it looks like Roger likes making posable figurines in his spare time. This is one mystery that is left pretty quickly, but it definitely struck me as interesting. We sneak past Roger a few times and into the next room. And I'm realizing now that I'm talking about all these rooms in sequential order, they all seem to have a theme to them. Like this one is full of large wooden clocks. Kind of like the kind you would see in an antique shop. They all show different times across the board, but ring at the same time collectively. This has helped shape the theory that time within the mall or the nowhere in general is fluid. Some are slower than others, while others are up to 5 times faster. When Six finally gets the slip on Roger, the clock room leads to a massive library. Why does the mall need a library? These shelves are tall and they span multiple rooms, so it leads me to believe that this library is built for or by Roger. But he can't read. He's blind. Can he read Braille? Let me know down in the comments what you think is going on here. Now, besides the huge bookshelves, the library looks like it has other uses. Piano storage maybe? We've seen so much furniture hung, and the library is no exception. There's a whole piano strung up by a rope hanging from the ceiling. You could also say that it's a method of storage that will keep the items from moving with the rocking of the mall. But on second hand, maybe this is the only way Roger could possibly be able to play piano, with the length of his arms and all. So 6 squeezes into the vents again and pushes forward into the unknown, but Roger definitely has a sixth sense for finding escaped children, so he seems to constantly show up at the least opportune times and corners us in a small metal room. The heavy-duty vertical steel door must be some kind of watertight door because it has enough pressure to eventually sever Roger's arms completely off. And then we crawl into a nearby vent to our next location. I think the Lair is interesting because of the several glimpses into the daily life of Roger it gives. And I've never even thought about any of these monsters or adults laying their heads down to rest or giving them a library or a piano as entertainment. After a little well-needed rest, Six wakes up back in the depths of the vents. She's truly at the mercy of wherever they take her, and in reality, I feel like she never really truly had a plan up until that final bite. She climbs up a ladder and is re-met with those hooks that carry bodies from the prison. She grabs a hold and is taken across another large chasm. We see a chef far in the background taking a small smoke break. As he shuffles back in, we drop down onto a pile of motionless, wrapped bodies. We're never specifically told what these are, but they have a certain shape to them, if you know what I mean. This area is infested with rats, a truly disgusting kitchen. And their meager attempts at catching the rats with 1 or 2 traps it's honestly kind of funny though, and helpful for Six. She zigzags through all the carts full to the brim with these wrapped bodies, and finally makes it to a window that lets into the kitchen's pantry. There's a few fruits and vegetables lining the shelves, but it's nothing close to enough to providing a meal for the hundreds of guests that are looking to indulge in gluttony while on their stay here. A large majority of the food being cooked, chopped, and ground is meat. The very introduction to the chef we see in the kitchen is as they're chopping up a nice big steak of sorts. As we escape the chef and climb into the rafters above him, we see there's even fish being stored up here. Now, I know y'all see how those chefs are built. There's no way those little potato bodies are able to climb up into the rafters to fetch some old fish. How long has this been up here? We climb up and into a vent that leads up to the upstairs bathroom and bedroom of the 2 chefs. One point to note that is pretty obvious from the start is that they each have their own designated toilet and bed, but they are pushed so close together it looks like they'd be conjoined twins or something. I think this is a weird detail because we don't really usually see them all that close to each other. One of the chefs is even sleeping alone while we creep in. Maybe it's a comfort thing, or maybe they just usually do things together and we caught them on a bad night. Also, I can't tell if they are good chefs or not. There's multiple cutting board areas that are left dirty, there's a fish head on the ground, and just a general sense of uncleanliness from the kitchen to the meat grinder to even the freezer. Throughout this whole kitchen experience, we see those same hooks on the track that brought us here. Maybe they repurposed them to deliver the prepared food, because when we use the hooks to escape, they eventually lead us to the guest area. The kitchen is a great little area because it expands the world without showing us the larger world. And really, what better way to learn about a place than through its food? We see the immediate arrival of the guests, all waddling into the mouth of the exposed maw. This is also the only time we see where we are from the outside, and it doesn't really make much sense the first time you play either. When we come back inside, we are practically parkouring over the queue the guests have made to get to their first meal. It's definitely the nicest area we've seen thus far. Now, this is definitely the nicest area we've seen thus far. This part of the mall is highly reminiscent of Japanese architecture, specifically similar to Japanese restaurants. Everything seems extremely sturdy, and let's be honest, It needs to be.
Oh my God!
6 climbs the beams and slats and manages to get into the main dining area. Lined with large box lights, huge wooden tables with piles of food on them, and stools with stacked empty dishes. This place is a genuine pigsty too, and the guests care very little about what stays intact as they reach for 6, hoping to get a nibble. Also, I do not have a single clue how these big boys and girls get on those stools. They gonna be sweaty after that. We climb up only to reveal even more tables full of people, food, and spirits. It's certainly safe to say the lady has this system down to a science. So we run until we slip through a hole at the bottom of a dining room wall. Then 6 runs into the public bathroom on this floor. I don't really want to imagine what those walls have seen, but you know what? Someone does. When you break the mirror in here, it reveals a small room with a chair behind it. It was a 2-way mirror, and someone wanted to watch the guests. Going number 2, I don't know. Although, if we look a little deeper into this, there are bars behind the chair. Maybe it was a special kind of prison for a special kind of person to receive a special kind of punishment. The place, it seems, 6 was meant to be all along. The ladies' quarters is immediately noticeable by its ornate wallpaper, framed paintings, and its mannequins littering every single corner. Not only that, but once we enter her makeup room, we see her wardrobes and piles of clothing. The lady sits still, combing her hair in a severely broken mirror. I think this particular moment hits so hard because while everything is near perfect and normal to some extent, the mirror is a huge differentiation. That may also be for foreshadowing purposes later on down the road. I feel like between the mannequins and the eyes on every single door, you feel watched and uncomfortable the whole time you're in her quarters. A great trick in using the location as an extension of a character. 6 unlocks a door and is immediately unwelcome in a dark room filled wall to wall with mannequins. I seem to lean toward the idea that the lady only wears this formal attire. The kimono she has on isn't her only one though, but as you progress through this part of the game, you see countless other outfits up and down the walls. Everything seems to progressively look more and more covered in dust too. We get into the very back of the storage area where we find a room littered with broken mirrors. Something very interesting to keep around, but thankfully there is one fully intact and big enough for 6 to carry. This storage area is where we have our final boss battle against the lady, a dark, dusty, and empty room. And once she wins, 6 crawls toward an injured lady and takes the lady's famed powers, all under the watch of an eye carved into the wall in front of her. Everything goes black, and we revisit 6 as she walks zombie-like toward the exit of the mall, which happens to be through the guests' dining area. She walks up to and through a mighty metal door, also imbued with the eye. She's actively walking toward it and through the door. Maybe this means that after taking the lady's powers, 6 has joined a group that uses the eye as their symbol. That is definitely something that should be kept tabs on from now on, especially since even Little Nightmares 2 and 3 have those eyes. Now this is where the base game for Little Nightmares ends, but we have a whole DLC that follows the Runaway Kid. Now, the Runaway Kid story is heavily intertwined with 6's, and even though they never officially meet, their paths cross in terms of location quite a bit, so I won't be covering the locations that I've already talked about. The Runaway Kid wakes up in the prison, and while I can't completely agree with his choices, he finds himself taking a little different route than 6. Going in the opposite direction, he decides to jump into an open sewer hole. This takes him on a long fall into possibly the deepest parts of the mall, the depths. Lucky for him, he lands in deep water. Unlucky for him, this huge cavernous room is nothing but deep water, and he'll have to get used to that because he'll be doing a lot of swimming. Besides the fact that gallons upon gallons of water is leaking into the bottom of this vessel, nothing is immediately alarming. He pushes some floating loose luggage closer to a wall to get out of this first pit of water and hops through a door partially boarded up. He finds a flashlight, which is supremely lucky considering the next few rooms are pitch black, wet, and crawling with those black leeches. Running fast, he dips and dives under large pipes, climbs tall grated walls, and swims through, questionable water. This area would probably reek, in my opinion. It looks like it's been long forgotten with junk and trash just sitting in these waters. No one has been here to clean up, probably ever. It looks like it's the mall's personal dump. While trash does seem to be a main feature of this area, I think it could also have a different purpose. With so many pipes and pools leading to one another, it could be a water displacement system. Maybe water is supposed to be there to weigh down the mall in specific circumstances. The runaway kid crawls through one of these pipes and into another tall room, one with a lever connected to a system that controls the level the water is in the space, and interestingly, a toilet too. Must be a full-time job being down there, but no one's there either. At this point, I feel like the mall has been in commission for a long time, so you'd think there would be workers everywhere. But maybe the lady has become so enthralled with the surface value of being beautiful, she's forgotten the inner workings. I mean, it's literally all falling apart. After some serious swimming and a shocking battle with a water-type grandma, we climb out of the depths using an extremely tall ladder, but immediately caught by Roger, who wraps us up and places us on the hook system. Thankfully, the runaway kid slips out, but has a pretty nasty fall into the hideaway. The hideaway seems to be the main home of the furnaces generating the power for the mall, the coal it uses, and the gnomes. It reminds me of what a coal warehouse would feel like, because we land in a large room with piles and piles of coal everywhere. It's dark, dusty, and overall extremely dreary. Then we finally make it to the heart, or at least one of them. A larger coal-fed furnace, very similar to the one in Spirited Away, and a small ramp that leads up to the mouth. It's insinuated we have to acquire the help of multiple gnomes to feed this monstrous furnace in order to ascend to a higher level using coal bins. Eventually we do get to that point, but not without going through a myriad of rooms that seem to be filled with files, notes, and cabinets filled with even more of the same stuff. It's strange there would be such a vast collection of paperwork in an otherwise disorganized world, but maybe these files are used to keep track of all the work. This area is definitely the underbelly of the mall that seems like it exploits the gnomes and children alike into powering the mall. Maybe that's what it takes to actually bring some organization to the nowhere. After tromping through files and coal, we find Roger in his doll workshop. I don't know how he finds the time to do all this stuff. I swear he's everywhere. But this spot is equipped with a table saw, woodworking tools, and previous parts he's already made. It's a small area, but it's interesting to know Roger has a creepy little nasty hobby he loves. Now I know this area was titled the Hideaway, but I think the true hideaway is where we find ourselves after passing all the coal and the main furnace, because there's a hidden room the gnomes seem to especially call home. Hidden by a rather heavy suitcase is a hole leading to a cozy reprieve from the cold depths. A warm furnace glows gently in front of the runaway kid and his new friends, the gnomes, whose shadows cast behind them give a glimpse at who they once were. Children. It's a moment that finally lets us know, at least there's one safe and sacred place inside the mall. And there we have it. The twisted and oftentimes cruel world of the mall. From the cold prison to the feeling of being watched at all times within the ladies' quarters, each location within the nightmarish vessel tells its own story. About hunger, power, and sometimes a moment of comfort. Every corner of the mall reminds us of how small we are in a world that never stops consuming. It's a place built on fear, from both the visitors and those who inhabit it. And the mall isn't just a place. It's a force, a constant presence within the game and perhaps the most terrifying character of all. And thank you so much for joining me all the way to the very end of this deep dive into the mall. If you enjoyed the secrets that we found out, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. It helps a lot. Also, join my Discord so we can all discuss more video game theories. And let me know in the comments, which part of the mall is the scariest to you? Until next time, peace.